I love this book, The Captain Class by Sam Walker. It's about sports, but it's really about life. And to me, it's about business leadership. A supervisor in the Air Force recommended this book to me, and I've gone on to recommend the book to others. What's really powerful to me about the book is that it took a rigorous and objective approach to determining what makes a team great, much in the same way that the book Good to Great studied what makes a company great. And very interestingly, both books came to very similar conclusions. It's about humble, determined leadership. So the great team captains in the captain class have many of the same personal characteristics as the great level 5 business leaders in Good to Great. Okay, so it all started when sports journalist Sam Walker set out to make an authoritative list of the best sports teams of all time, and then study them to figure out what made them great, what set them apart. First, he came up with criteria: sustained dominance, number of championships, winning percentage, etc. He analyzed sports teams from 37 different sports dating back to the 1880s. It was tens of thousands of teams, and he narrowed it down to the 16 best. Then he set out to figure out what they all had in common, and he actually hoped it would be something other than leadership. He mentions being kind of disappointed when he ultimately determined that that was the only common link. But in fact, all the teams on his final list had periods of dominance that coincided with one player. And that one player in all cases was the captain. And the captains all shared common attributes, common personal characteristics, common leadership styles. And of course, those qualities are essential for the success of teams, not just in sports, but also in business. Okay, so I want to get to that list of 7 qualities, but I figured you might be curious, so just quickly, I'll tell you the 16 best teams according to Sam Walker in chronological order. The Collingwood Magpies, Australian rules football, 1927 to 1930. The New York Yankees, 1949 to 1950. Hungary men's soccer, 1950 to 1955. The Montreal Canadiens of 1955 to 1960. Boston Celtics of 1956 to 1969. Brazil's men's soccer, 1958 to 62. Pittsburgh Steelers from 74 to 80. The Soviet Union men's ice hockey team, boo, 80 to 84, the New Zealand All Blacks, 86 to 90. Cuba women's volleyball, 1991 to 2000. Australia women's field hockey, 1993 to 2000. U.S. women's soccer, 96 to 99. The San Antonio Spurs, 1997 to 2016. Barcelona professional men's soccer, 2008 to 13. France men's handball, 2008 to 2015. And again, the New Zealand All Blacks, from a different era, 2011 to 2015. Just thought you might be curious. Okay, back to the 7 qualities. As I go through these, think of how they apply to organizations outside of sports. And these qualities are totally different from what Sam Walker expected. He expected the leaders to be these superstars, glamorous, charismatic, celebrity leaders. Instead, what he found was a group of humble, tenacious leaders unafraid of grunt work. So here are the 7 qualities of the captains of the greatest teams in sports history. 1, they took care of tough, unglamorous tasks. One example is the story of U.S. women's soccer team captain Christy Rampone carrying her teammates' luggage into the hotel when they travel. Despite being an accomplished athlete herself, she didn't hesitate to do the mundane task of lugging bags, showing her willingness to work for the team's success in any way possible. So this exemplifies the captains on the list who were functionaries, not stars, and who didn't seek personal glory, but rather focused on the good of the team. Another example, in 1962, Brazil's soccer team won its 2nd consecutive World Cup with Pelé, of course, as their star player, scoring 77 goals, but the captain was Hilderaldo Bellini, a humble and tough central defender who never scored a goal during his 9-year stint with Brazil. Bellini's role was to unify the team through the grunt work, his fearless defense, and urging them forward on the pitch when their confidence sagged. These leaders were not the exceptional talents or superstars. They labored in the shadow of the stars, carried water for the team, and led from the back. 2, they broke the rules for a purpose. During the 1996 Olympics, Cuba's women's volleyball team was struggling to defend their 6-year reign. In the semifinals against Brazil, Captain Medea Luis implemented a plan of psychological warfare and instructed her team to insult their opponents during the match. Despite earning yellow cards, the plan worked, and Cuba won the match and later the gold medal. Luis was later criticized for her unsportsmanlike tactics. But the other captains on the list also used aggressive tactics in competition. Now, the moment the game ended, they returned to normal. But in competition, they believed that the rules of the sport superseded those of polite society, and aggressive tactics were a valuable tool, not to inflict pain on others, but to further the team's goals. 3, they communicated practically, not in grand speeches. The New York Yankees of Yogi Berra's era didn't have an official captain, but Yogi Berra was their undisputed leader, and famously his appearance and speech were in stark contrast to the glamorous New York Yankees when he debuted in 1946. But the team's starting catcher constantly spoke with his teammates, studied them, figuring out what was on their mind, working on signals with the pitchers, and when a pitcher struggled, he would give them a pep talk or crack a joke and break the tension. So despite having several pitchers throughout his career with the team, the pitchers under his tutelage always flourished, or commonly flourished, and the Yankees won 5 consecutive championships. All the captains on this list preferred to speak to everyone equally about the task at hand rather than being gifted orators. Here's another quick example. During a timeout in the 2013 NBA Finals, San Antonio Spurs captain Tim Duncan pulled aside teammate Tony Parker to talk to him. Parker had been struggling, made a few crucial mistakes, some turnovers. Duncan didn't yell at him or point fingers. Instead, he gently put his arm around Parker's shoulder and spoke softly to him. During the conversation, he actually touched Parker 5 separate times, having his arm around him, lightly tapping him on the chest to emphasize points, and the conversation seemed to calm Parker down and refocus him. It was encouraging and supportive. After the timeout, Parker scored 8 of the Spurs' final 10 points, and they went on to win. A powerful example of leadership and communication with emotional intelligence rather than grand oratory. It's about creating a culture of trust and support within the Spurs in that case that allowed them to achieve great success, and it was common throughout the other great teams. 4, they knew how to motivate through their actions. So in 1976, the Pittsburgh Steelers were in trouble after a poor start to their season, and in a crucial game against Cincinnati, the team's middle linebacker captain, Jack Lambert, played so fiercely that his bandages came undone and covered his uniform in gory blood, and the trainers could have fixed it, but they didn't even ask because they knew Lambert wouldn't want to. He wanted his teammates to see all the blood as a motivator. He was an excellent motivator and understood the power of nonverbal communication. So Sam Walker notes that all the captains on this list did similarly calculated acts to reach their teammates on a deeper level, especially in tough situations where words were not enough. 5, they were independent thinkers, unafraid to dissent. In 1980, the Soviet Union's Red Army hockey team lost to the Americans in an historic upset at the Olympics, and their coach, Viktor Tikhonov, told the team not to point fingers. However, on the plane ride back to Moscow, the coach privately criticized individual players for their failures, causing veteran defenseman Valery Vasilyev to fly into a rage and threaten to throw him out of the plane. Vasilyev was not punished for his outburst and eventually became the team captain. And with him as their leader, the Soviet team won 3 world championships consecutively and an Olympic title. So the captains on this list understand conflict and using it as a means for achieving the team's goals, even if it's with the coaches or executives of their own team. 6, they were relentless. In the deciding Game 7 of the 1957 NBA Finals, Boston Celtics against the St. Louis Hawks, little-known rookie Bill Russell came out of nowhere for what's known as the Coleman play, where he covered 94 feet in 3 seconds, came out of nowhere, blocked a key layup by star Jack Coleman. So this was a famous play because blocks weren't even that common at the time. It was just pure tenacity and relentlessness. Of course, they went on to win 11 titles in 13 seasons, and Bill Russell is considered one of the best basketball players ever, but this single action typifies his leadership. 7, they possessed remarkable levels of emotional self-control. Jérôme Fernandez from the French handball team, his father was dying of cancer before a championship. And so he had the choice between staying by his father's side or playing in the largest match of his career. He decided to play, but he didn't tell his teammates about his father's condition until after the game. Over the next 6 years under his leadership, France became the greatest dynasty in the history of international handball. And Fernandez, like other outstanding captains, possessed this selflessness and incredible emotional fortitude, making the right choices for the team's greater good, even if they were unpopular, controversial, or against his own personal interest or glory. So there you have it. Go forth and win a bunch of championships in the game of life with what you've learned here today. Like, subscribe, click the bell, enjoy our other videos on law, tech, and business leadership. Thank you for watching.